Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. On behalf of ILSC US and Canada and the Infant Nutrition Science Coalition, thank you very much for joining us for our second quarterly update call, which we had one back in June. And so I encourage you to go to our website at inscoalition.org if you missed it or you wanted like a nice introduction on the INSC if you need that. As well, and you can see what kind of updates we provided there, but we gave much more of an overview of kind of the inception of the INSC. So if you're curious about that, I again encourage you to go to our website to take a look at that first quarterly update call that we had. So we have over about 60 people registered from all over the world again, which includes North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia, which of course, for our Australian friends, you're probably watching the recording. Thank you for watching the recording. As I mentioned, it will be recorded. So if you do miss anything or you want to share this or if you have to leave early, the recording will be posted on our website in about a couple days. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So today we're going to give a few updates on where we've been since June. So that's going to include some outreach. I'm of course going to share about our first scientific roundtable series discussion, and then the next one that we have planned, and then future scientific roundtable series. I'll give some updates on what our working groups have been up to, which ties a lot into what our website or how our website has been progressing. We'll have some time to look at some of our activities that we're working on, including the perspectives paper and the workshop that we're planning for March. And then we will have time for some questions at the end, but feel free to type your questions in the chat box at any time. And of course, if you don't want to ask your question in the chat box, my inbox is always open for you to ask questions at any time. And yeah. So we have been busy this summer and fall at several different conferences. And so the first one that I wanted to mention was that a lot of folks already know this, but there was the Novel Ingredients for Infant Formula Nutrition Summit that was in Boston earlier this year in June. And so Vanessa Castagna and Paul Hanlon, two of our steering committee members, hosted a fireside chat that provided updates about the INSC's efforts and kind of tying it full circle from at the first Novel Ingredients Summit where they kind of introduced the idea. And so in August, the ILSC Federation, so again, ILSC is comprised of multiple institutes around the world. We had a booth at the IUNS ICN conference in Paris, and we had several ILSC members there, or ILSC federations there, and so that included ILSC Southeast Asia, ILSC Taiwan, ILSC Europe, ILSC US and Canada, of course, and ILSC Mesoamerica. And at our booth, we had a flyer about the INSC, as well as our first scientific roundtable, which again, I will talk about to encourage registration for that. And we saw a good bump in registration from folks that were interested. And so that might have been their first introduction to the INSC. And so we got to meet with a lot of different international scientists, and it was really fun. It was a really great way to meet folks from around the world. And then the following month, in September, several INSC members participated at the International Milk Genomics Consortium Symposium, which was in Aarhus in Denmark, and we actually presented a poster. And so you can see that on the right-hand side, we had a poster there that kind of gave some background about the INSC and two case studies that we were working on, or not that we were working on, but that we used as kind of the grounds and basis for the INSC's work. And if you want, you can find that poster on the resources page on our website. And you can also find it linked on the events page on our website. So if you want to take a look at that poster, because obviously you can't see it through that picture, you can take a look there. And it was really nice to connect with our members in person and as well meet some new faces. So as many of you know, we had our first scientific roundtable. I think it was a huge success. I think folks can agree there. The recording and summary are provided on the INSC's website. So again, that link will take you there, but you can also just go to inscoalition.org and you can find the recording to that session along with the summary. Our panelists were really excellent and of course fantastic to work with. And we are currently working on a more of a proceedings for that we're currently reviewing for hopefully that we can submit for publication. So fingers crossed there. Again, stay tuned for all of that. We had over 140 registrants, And there was representation from all different sectors, including healthcare. So I thought that was really interesting that we had some folks from healthcare that also tuned in as well. And so I hope that you will stay tuned for the proceedings that will come shortly. Now, we also have another scientific roundtable that is planning is underway. So we don't quite have a date for you yet, but again, as you'll hear me say, please stay tuned for that. This scientific roundtable is going to look at the term bioactive and how it's used in relation to components of human milk and infant formula ingredients, and what the consequences, so to say, would be of defining something as bioactive. And so we're really taking a pretty broad view of this topic, and we were looking at discussing whether the consequences of defining a component as bioactive are beneficial in regulatory contexts, and then consider maybe alternative ways. Maybe bioactive is not the best way to describe these ingredient interactions and with biological systems. And I do want to point out, I will share the panelists with you, but I did want to share that right now. Vanessa will be moderating that session, so that's pretty exciting. You can see our planning group here. So thank you again to Tim and Gyan for volunteering to participate in the planning of this session. So again, we're finalizing our speakers. I think it's going to prove to be a really excellent session. And just to give you an idea of kind of what we're thinking of for future scientific roundtables, some topics that we've discussed. Again, not set in stone, we're always open to suggestions, but how to translate exploratory preclinical NAM in animal models to established accredited models. We're looking at maybe leveraging systematic weight of the evidence evaluations to answer fundamental scientific questions, the process for establishing nutrient recommendations for infants, and then maybe an infant formula to market process. Like, what does that look like? But if you have ideas for scientific roundtable topics that or topics that you think would be good for a scientific roundtable, please reach out. We'd love to get your thoughts. And again, this is really supposed to be a group effort there. So our working groups have been, these are just, I want to preface, this is just a few of the things that the working groups have been up to. They've been really busy. Just met some folks from the waiting room. And so some of that has been when we went to the IMGC conference, we put together like buttons and stickers that we gave away to members of INSC, so that we kind of had that shared identity there. But I should mention that the concept of the scientific roundtables really originated from the outreach working group. And so that's just to give you an idea of kind of how these activities end up evolving from our network. And so right now we're working on developing a user submission form for both the events and the resources page. Again, I encourage you to go take a look at our website to see that. That will allow members and the network that we have to submit activities and materials for consideration to include on our website, because we really, again, want this website to be a one-stop shop for everything related to human milk science and infant formula. And we want to be that credible go-to resource for the broader scientific community. Metrics-wise, I'm happy to share that we have, since our website's launch, we've reached over 2,600 page views, and it continues to grow every day from a really global audience. And so we have visitors from, yes, the United States and Canada, but we also see a lot of our visitors from the Netherlands, Denmark, France, China, New Zealand, and Australia, just among some of the top countries that are represented. And then finally, the website's constantly being updated, so please continue to check back and see what we're working on and what we continue to add. I know this is a hard slide to see, but I will be sharing the slides so you will be able to see them or be able to zoom in on this a little closer. But I did just want to give an idea of our main working projects of the INSC. So that's the perspectives paper, the workshop, and the consensus paper. And so the timeline here gives you kind of an idea of where we currently are and, of course, where we've been. Our writing team's been hard at work finalizing the manuscript for the perspectives paper, and I'm going to hand it over to Candace shortly from the Oregon State University to give you a more in-depth update about the perspectives paper and an overview of that, but just again, so you can see it all laid out here. And you can see we have just kicked off workshop planning. In fact, we just had our second ever workshop planning call just about 2 hours ago, so we are knee deep in that. And then early next year, we're going to start outlining that consensus paper because it's a product of the workshop, aiming roughly for a fall publication, but we will adjust as needed. So let's dig in a bit to two main activities, so that perspectives paper and the workshop. And so first we'll start with the perspectives paper. I'm going to hand it over, like I mentioned, to my colleague Candace from the Oregon State University to provide a few updates about the paper. And yeah, so Candace, whenever you're ready, please feel free. I'll just tell me when to advance the slide.
I will.
Oh, I'm
I'll
sorry, Marie. Please go
if that's
ahead.
okay.
Yes, sorry, we had a change in presenter. So Marie's going to
Yeah.
present.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I'm Marie Ryan from Oregon State. So originally the task was with a team of writers from academia and industry develop a perspectives paper on the state of the science of infant formula to establish where science has been settled, where questions remain, and define focal topics for the INSC workshop. So far in the winter and spring, we had several planning meetings and made a collaborative outline with INSC. In spring, we identified and invited writers to collaborate on the writing. In summer/fall and kind of where we are now, we're in the process of those several drafts and heavy revision process with both all of our writers and the INSC steering committee, and have a plan for our final draft to be done in late November, so about a month from now, with planning to have it submitted to Advances in Nutrition before the sort of winter holidays. Yeah, next slide. Thank you. And for these key questions, these are kind of our takeaways for the reader and for our intro for workshop topics. And these are still being a little bit refined, but I'll just go through these 5. So 1, what are the key compositional and functional differences in bioactive proteins between infant formula and human milk? And I think we've refined this a little bit to actually say compositional and functional differences in milk components with a focus on proteins also. And then number 2, how do we establish normative or reference ranges for functional human milk components responsible for healthy infant development? Number 3, given the variability and potential synergistic interactions between components of human milk, how can infant formula be designed in the context of the knowledge that human milk is a complex biological system? 4, which additional measurements/metrics are needed to observe infant growth or development in order to appropriately determine the impact of novel infant formula additions? And 5, what are acceptable non-human models to determine novel component safety? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Marie. And that's a perfect segue actually into kind of where we are with the workshop. So as Marie alluded there, we are using those kinds of key questions to inform how we're planning for the workshop. As I mentioned, we only just started, but I can already tell you right now, we're looking at a much more interactive format than a traditional lecture style. So I'm really excited to be able to share more with you soon. Our workshop planning committee is definitely working hard at that. And so again, we want to incorporate discussion with the audience somehow, as well as, really keeping it discussion based as opposed to revisiting the same topics again, lecture style. And there will be opportunities both in person and virtual. There will likely be some, pre-work as we dig into these discussion questions and attempt to reach consensus on topics and identify areas where we haven't yet reached consensus, which will again inform that consensus paper. So please stay tuned for more information. But I can share with you our fabulous workshop planning committee. And so as you can see here, it's comprised of both INSC steering committee members as well as INSC members, and then 2 invited experts as well. And so they're working hard. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to get to work with them and all the time that they're contributing. So don't forget to save the dates. If you haven't already, as you can see on the screen here, I highly recommend that you sign up for our mailing list. If you haven't already, I think most people here have, but you can scan that QR code and you'll get a much nicer newsletter style updates about that's going to be the best way to stay up to date with all of the activities that the INSC is working on. And again, I promise we try not to spam you with a bunch of stuff, but we do want to keep you updated. And we are, as you can see at the bottom, we are exploring opportunities for members and other organizations to sponsor the INSC workshop. I don't have the final details for you yet, but this will really help make sure that our workshop is impactful and wide-reaching as possible. And again, we will share more information and how to get involved as soon as we can. So that is what I have for you. I now want to stop and open it up for questions, as well as open up the floor to any of our INSC steering committee members or the workshop planning committee, or even any of our members to share any feedback or questions or anything that I may have missed. But I'm happy to open the floor up for your input now.